Now, without any further ado, allow me to introduce the next topic, which is women in transport. Women in transport is going to be facilitated by Lucy Kihonge, who is one of us from Flone Initiative.
Thank you so much, Mbeki. Greetings and welcome from wherever you're joining us from. It is with great honor to welcome you to this session. I am excited to be making this presentation on lived experiences among women in transport. Also joining me on location is Elizabeth Njoki Kinuthia, who is a woman in transport from Nairobi, Kenya. Virtually, I'm joined by Jacqueline Danu Mauta, County Director, Public Transport and Safety from Machakos County, Kenya. I'm also joined by Hashita Jamba from WRI and Sam Clark from TransAid. If you have any questions from any of the speakers, kindly feel free to pin them on the chat. All the speakers shall be responding at the end of the session. And as I get my slides ready, my name is, next slide please. My name is Lucy Kihonge, currently serving as the Program Officer at Flone Initiative. I'm in charge of project planning, monitoring, and evaluation. I have a background in gender and development studies and a special interest in diversity, gender diversity and social inclusion. I just start off with a quote that says, "The power of a woman is the boldness to face everything that comes her way every day." Next slide. My presentation today will focus on industry challenges affecting women meaningful participation in regard to access and control over decision making and access to better working conditions in the sector. I'll also speak about implications of COVID-19 to women in transport professionals in Kenya. I'll also focus on interventions adopted by Flone Initiative to promote meaningful engagement and participation of women in transport. I'll now proceed to speak about the industry challenges, and in summary, the first challenge is poor working conditions and discrimination. Number two, we have informality in the sector, sexual harassment, and bad reputation. Next slide. Just to go deeper into the sexual harassment bit, about 60% of women in transport do not feel safe while using and working in the public transport sector. In regard to experiences of sexual and gender-based violence, about 75% of women in transport from Nairobi, 46% from Machakos, and 73 from Mombasa have experienced sexual harassment. And just to mention, 35 of these incidences are verbal harassment, 43% of these incidences are sexual harassment. Sorry about that. Just to mention, 56% of women with disabilities and the elderly women have experienced sexual harassment while commuting from one place to another, and most of these cases end up unreported, with about 84% of them in Mombasa and 79 of these incidences going unreported in Machakos County. For those incidences that manage to get the conviction stage, only 2% are expedited in Mombasa County, and only 8% are expedited in Machakos County. Just to mention, 82% of these incidences are perpetrated by male PSV crew, and as you all understand, the public transport sector is male-dominated. In summary, 88% of all women working in the transport sector have, in their lifetime, experienced or witnessed violence against women and girls. Next slide. I'll talk about the poor working conditions and discrimination. And as mentioned previously, the public transport is primarily male-dominated, with about between 4 to 10% of the public transport workforce comprising of women, and less than 10% of these women serve as drivers. In Kenya, the driver's role is considered as the most promising role because people have more access, the drivers have access to more income, and also they are guaranteed of job security in one way or another compared to working as a tout or a conductor. During COVID-19, about 52% of the women in transport lost their job, and this again had a ripple effect to their mental health and also how they were able to navigate through that session in regard to family care and providing for basic needs for their loved ones. About 52% of the women in Kenya have concerns on sanitary facility, where their argument that there are no accessible washrooms and the few available facilities, either they have a cost implication attached to it, whereby for someone to use a public toilet, they have to pay some amount of money, and also considering these women work for more than 12 hours in a day, even taking a shower in the course of the day, at that time of the month when, for example, they're having their monthly period, becomes quite difficult. From a study conducted by Flone Initiative in Mombasa, Machakos, and Nairobi counties, about 57% of women would consider other forms of employment. And when asked which other forms of employment, they responded that they would prefer jobs that are more permanent and pensionable, because majority of them, about 60%, are women, single parent with children, between 2 to 3 children, who are dependent on them solely. A large percentage will consider professional development trainings, but again, it's so difficult to access this training in as far as the informality of the public transport sector is concerned, and also imbalance in how the women balance between care work and also their engagement at the community level. Next slide. The next challenge is the informality in the sector, where about 81% of women in transport professionals are engaged on a casual basis. And again, this comes with its own challenges, considering it's characterized by poor remuneration. Number 2, there is a summary dismissals without notice. And again, this again is a violation of the NTSA Act and also Convention C190, which calls on all employers to ensure that all employees have a working contract and they provide better working conditions for them. But due to the informality in the sector, women are not able to enjoy these rights. 15% of women professionals commit over 12 hours to work. And again, as mentioned, this has a ripple effect on how they balance between care work and working in the transport sector. And when you talk of 12 hours, these are women who have children who are going to school every day, and at some times, they have to work for even 18 hours. So if you have a child, that means you need to leave that child with a caregiver or someone else to take care of that child. We also have job insecurity after maternity. And just to be clear on this, in Kenya and other countries in Africa, based on the informality of the sector again, for example, getting pregnant is a form of losing your job. You are not guaranteed, like, after I give birth, I can come back. And when we are interacting with these women, they're like, okay, someone is telling me to get a baby, but that means I might not be able to feed this baby because at the end of the day, I'm losing my job. Next slide. The last challenge is bad image and reputation, whereby the industry is characterized to be a main space. And for the women who show up and who decide to take up opportunities in the sector are regarded as people who are going against the norms, women who, quote unquote, cannot keep marriages, women who basically cannot be ruled by men or their spouses. So that has been a great challenge for them. And also there is discouragement from family members and friends who do not really want to be associated with these women or be proud of them and introduce them, and also be able to state what these women do to meet their daily needs. Next slide. I'll speak in brief on COVID-19 and its implication to WIT professionals. And again, was a study that was conducted by Flone Initiative in 2020. And from the study, it was established that 52% of the women in transport lost their jobs in Kenya. But again, the 52% of these women were working in touts and conductors. And losing a job meant for them, they've lost an income. And due to paralyzation of the public transport system meant that these women had to go home, back to their children who are solely dependent on them. In 2020 also, 97% of these women, one of the challenges that they highlighted was food insecurity, because the income, sometimes the amount of money that they get from the sector, it's so hard to save. So because it's so minimal, and that means they have to feed from hand to mouth. 30% had defaulted from paying rent, and some of them actually had to send their dependents up country to stay with family members because they could not cope up with their life in Nairobi or the major cities, and having family members around them was a burden at that time. And again, they feared that they could contract COVID-19 by basically going to work. 36% were not able to purchase sanitary towels during COVID. And again, you know what that means, because if you don't have money, you can't access like basic amenities. And lastly, some of these women faced police brutality during curfew enforcement. And in Kenya, most of the public transport operators operate between 4 a.m. in the morning to around midnight. So you can imagine the curfew was running between 6 to 6, and then when you are caught on the road, then you will be able to face the law. Next slide, please. Flone Initiative have, for the past 7 years, focused on interventions to ensure that we promote and also ensure that women working in the transport sector are able to access better opportunities, are able to go up the career ladders by providing that platform for women to network, access peer-to-peer mentorship, and also provide professional development trainings such that the women can increase their competitiveness and also be able to run for leadership positions in the transport sector, and also ensure that they are able to bargain for better working conditions in the sector. So the Flone Initiative focuses on 3 major strategies. Number 1 is attracting women in the transport sector. Also focuses on retaining the women after getting these women into the transport sector. They ensure that they provide the necessary either skills or the necessary lobby for good work, better working conditions to ensure that this woman is retained in the sector, and eventually ensure that the woman is advanced to the next career level. Next slide. I'll discuss in brief the professional development trainings that have been able to be offered since 2016, when the program was started. And number 1 is professional drivers training. And as mentioned, about 52% of women lost their jobs during COVID. And again, a majority of these women serve as conductors and touts, which is not really a good position to be in. And to just have that sustainable source of income for the women, Flone Initiative, in partnership with the French Embassy, was able to support 33 women to train as professional drivers, and some of them have already been employed. We've also provided training on supporting and interacting with persons with disabilities in public transport. And again, this marries well with the Moving Barriers program that seeks to promote disability mainstreaming in the public transport sector. And we equip the women with the skills on how understanding different forms of disabilities, both visible and invisible, and also have the tips on how to handle and support a person with disability. We also supported women in transport from Mombasa with professional tuk-tuk driving training. Also offered another training on professional conductors training, and these are training that are basically meant to elevate the women to better positions in the transport sector so that they are able to lobby for better working conditions and have like a sustainable source of income. We've also provided trainings on basic mechanics, and this again, it's just ensure that the women have those skills in case they do not have access to a near garage or the vehicle breaks down on the road, they are able to do like minor repairs. Lastly, we've provided women and BRT, and as you all know, most of you know, sorry about that, like the government of Kenya is rolling out the BRT system in Kenya, and we are really hoping to see that more women will take up opportunities in the system and be able also to participate in technical committees in promoting gender inclusion in the BRT system. Next slide. We've also, to support these women to ensure that they are elevated in their careers, we've been able to provide financial management trainings. And again, considering the public transport is informal, the financial management training has come in handy by preparing the women, by ensuring that they learn on basic saving skills, and again, they are able to save for them to have a dignified retirement plan. We also have sexual reproductive health rights, and this is a training that we normally emphasize on because most of the women do not really understand when they are being sexually assaulted. So the training equips the women with the skills on different forms of sexual harassment, how to respond to these incidences, where to report, and also how to support survivors and victims of harassment while in public transport. Another training that we've managed to offer to the women is women rights in public transport. And basically, this is a training that provides skills to the women on what they need to do, their rights in public transport, including sexual reproductive health, participating in leadership, access to better working conditions, and other rights that involve working in a pensionable and also being able to sign contracts. We have gender mainstreaming training that focuses on ensuring that women understand their contribution in the sector and how they can be effectively engaged in advocating for the rights in the transport sector and meaningful participation. Customer service. We also have self-protection training that equips women with basic skills on how to protect themselves in case they face a threat or they face some sort of sexual harassment. First aid, and lastly, CV writing. And the last bit of it on CV writing, it's basically to prepare the women for better opportunities, not only in the informal sector, but also to enable them have the skills to present themselves in interviews and also be able to apply for opportunities in the formal public transport sector. Next slide. Flone initiative have also focused so much on economic empowerment of the women. And first, we've managed to organize the women into table banking groups. And first of all, we've managed to organize the women in transport into chapters. We have 3 chapters: Women in Transport Mombasa, Women in Transport Nairobi, and Women in Transport Machakos. So these chapters are able to provide a platform for these women to get that collective bargain, have a voice, access peer-to-peer mentorship, and as Naomi mentioned, to promote their visibility and contribution in the transport sector. So the table banking groups, which have been further registered into self-help groups, have provided a platform for the women to ensure that they have access to support from state and non-state actors in regard to financial in-kind donation to basically be able to boost their daily earnings and be able to access better opportunities. We have also been organizing development of investment strategies and organizing investment clinics where women get an opportunity to brainstorm on how best to participate in the transport sector and also translate that to their families and also have like a clear plan of where they want to go and have a clear plan of how they want to retire. Next slide. We haven't achieved this by ourselves, but we've worked closely with different partners and friends of women in transport. And some of the support that we've received so far includes bursary support from National Gender Affirmative Action Fund. And these bursaries are meant to support school fees for women, for the children of women in transport. And we are grateful to the Office of the Women Representative Nairobi, who have been so supportive with this. We've also been able to lobby for support from Machakos County Government, who are currently leading chapter activities in Machakos by providing sign language training for the women. We've also worked with Boda Boda Tuk Tuk Association and Taxi Association, who have been so instrumental in sustaining and supporting the Women in Transport Mombasa chapter by ensuring that these women have a venue to attend meetings each and every month and also chair the meetings when Flone staff are not on the ground. We've also worked closely with Synergy Women Organization, who have been so instrumental in supporting the economic empowerment program for the women in transport in the 3 chapters of Machakos, Mombasa, and Nairobi. We've also been able to lobby for grant support for to WIT Nairobi, table banking groups. And again, these are small grants that are used to boost the table banking kitty for the women so that they are able to basically have that like growth in their savings and also improve on their investments, and also act as a motivation to these women to continue growing and empowering themselves. We also received training support from Institute of Transport and Development Policy on BRT mainstreaming in the transport sector, and we are so glad that most of our women are so prepared to start working in the BRT system. And lastly, we've received amazing support from the Nairobi City County by ensuring our women participate in different technical working groups, providing feedback to different government agencies in as far as women inclusion in public transport is concerned. Next slide. And thank you so much for listening to me. If you have questions for me, kindly just pin them in the chat. I'll be able to respond them at the end of this session. And now, I would like to introduce Jacqueline Mauta, Director Transport and Safety from Machakos County Government. Jacqueline has a background in education and currently enrolled for a master's degree in strategic management. She has over 20 years of experience in public service with county and national government, and also leading conversation in gender mainstreaming in public transport at local and international levels. She is currently leading conversations on inclusion and adoption of policies to end sexual harassment in public transport systems in Machakos. Jacqueline, if you can hear me, kindly take it up. If not, as Jackie is preparing, I would like to invite Elizabeth Njoki Kenuthia. She's joining us on location in Nairobi. Elizabeth is a woman in transport based in Nairobi. She is also a public transport operator, a bus owner, and also a women in transport chair lady. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. As you have heard, I'm Elizabeth Njoki Kenuthia. I serve as a chair lady for the Women in Transport. I'm from Embasava Sacco. I work as a conductor and a bus owner. And my role as a chair lady is to mobilize and advocate for women in transport. The Women Mobilize Women initiative has impacted our lives in many ways. Namely, it is a safe where women can share their challenges, achievements, and share their opinions without being victimized, criticized, and undermined. Women's rights are advocated for in the sense of leadership and inclusive in the male-dominated field. Collective bargains where the union negotiate contracts with employers to determine our terms of employment, including pay, benefits, hours, leave, job health and safety policies, ways to balance work and family, and more. Economic empowerment, like table banking, has given women independence and the ability to support their families as well. Women have been able to help out when it comes to paying school fees and rents, as well as purchasing groceries and other household goods. It has supported women in transport field by creating a platform to encourage behavior changes and designs that accommodate women and persons with disability as part of stakeholders in the public transport field. We have been part of change. We seek important opportunities to put an end to gender-based violence, ensuring that the public transport sector is safe for everyone. Also, it has attracted to retain and promote women in the industry by providing skills and support necessary to realize a safe, sustainable working environment that's free from violence. We have benefited from a lot of skills and training, such as first aid, self-defense, financial management, customer care, and many others. This has led women coming together and creating an association where women have each other's back and empowering one another. This has led to women coming together and creating an association where women, This has helped us have banking within us. Table banking has enabled us to be financially stable in that we can be able to cater for our basic needs, school fees, and expanding investments. I believe there's a need involving men in supporting the women in transport. For them to be part of advocating women access to employment, rights, and opportunity. To ensure inclusive of all gender in public transport aspects, e.g., decision-making, leadership, initiative with men should also be involved in to understand the women's way of life and the needs to empower them. For them to be key players in gender equality by introducing fair employment, practice, anti-discrimination measures, and gender-inclusive decision-making, and by combating sexual harassment in the workplace. They are also beneficiary of the fruits of the women in transport, e.g., table banking helps in settling the bills. If I'm given an opportunity to work in the women in through education and skills that I have gained. And also I'll make the public transport sector for us all by involving men in the decision-making of issues that involve women in the industry. I would also ensure the safety of all persons by ensuring the rights of women and vulnerable groups are respected in every aspect, and keeping advocating for inclusivity of all genders and vulnerable groups. I would also ensure that women in transport are involved in the savings, whereby they'll be beneficiaries of the loans in the SACCO, because for now, most of us are denied the chances in saving in the SACCO. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that amazing presentation. And just to mention, Elizabeth has been one of the beneficiaries of the Women in Transport program. We started with her. She was among the few women who we started with back in 2016. Elizabeth, thank you. So, Jacqueline, if you can hear us from Machakos County, kindly unmute yourself and take it up.
Yeah, my name is Jacqueline, as you've heard. I'm currently a director with the Public Transport and Safety, Machakos County. I'm glad to be in this forum In 2022, in collaboration with Flone initiative, the county government launched the Machakos Women in Transport chapter. The longest time, the Department of Roads and Public Works has been focusing on infrastructure, primarily the road designs and construction. But this year, 2022, we have an opportunity to incorporate a new perspective in women in transport. Through the chapter, I have been able to connect and interact with female operators. The chapter, which has about 30 women, has served as a collective voice for women in transport from the county. In the chapter, we have drivers, conductors, female investors, motorcycle riders, and government officials. The chapter has brought together women from all walks of public transport. We convene each month for table banking, where we access short and long-term loans to supplement our daily earnings and support our dependents. We further registered 2 self-help groups, fully constituted with their own officials. We also opened bank accounts to lobby for support from government and non-governmental organizations in preparation for investment and retirement. What does the chapter do? It promotes visibility of women in transportation, and especially at the intersections of their contributions to public transport workforce. It also adapts mechanisms to address sexual and gender-based violence inflicted on women and other vulnerable groups. It is through the chapter that the county approved the Machakos County Sexual Harassment and Gender-Based Violence Policy. The policy has guidelines to prevent, protect, and respond to incidences of sexual harassment and gender-based violence in the county. Through the chapter, the county has committed to taking part in rolling out awareness campaigns on the need for women's inclusion in the public transport sector. WIT, as we call it, Women in Transport chapter, shaped the country's perception of gender in transport, especially the exclusion of women in the design and implementation of county projects because of their invisibility. The county has been actively engaged in implementing the gender mainstreaming agenda in transport. The county is currently promoting or leading the chapter sustainability plan by offering monthly basic sign language training to promote disability inclusion in the county, as earlier mentioned by Flone. As a woman in transport leader, I have been able to see the benefits of professional development trainings for women, especially in customer service, sexual reproductive health, rights, and financial management. These are skills that have improved women's autonomy to make informed decisions at the household and community levels. Their confidence has improved, and they can bargain and negotiate for better opportunities. However, the chapter has faced its own challenges, and one major challenge is inadequate budgetary allocation from the county to support the activities. We've seen the activities that we've been doing. There are many: training professional drivers from the women, training customer care, giving even the sign language trainings to help those who are in a situation where they need to use the sign language. So there's such budgets have not been brought on board, and there's a major challenge. Another challenge would be few partners to sustain the chapter activities. We also are applying to partners, different partners, to partner with us in these activities. There's also informality and stigmatization of women working in the sector. This has led to most of the WIT or women in transport needs and priorities being overlooked. I am looking forward to the growth of this chapter and also calling on other supporters to plug in the much needed support to elevate the voices of the women in transport. We cannot achieve this by ourselves, but we also need to be supported by all state and non-state actors to ensure the gender is mainstreamed in the transport sector. Until women are organized and prepared to lead, then their voices will remain at the grassroots. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that presentation. And just to reiterate on to what Jacqueline said, there are major challenges in Machakos County that the chapter is facing, including, and not only in Machakos County, but across the country, where there are minimal or no budgetary allocations to WIT activities. But again, this is something we are lobbying for and encouraging the national and the county governments to support the women in transport activities. We cannot keep talking about women in transport without allocating the necessary resources and also providing the necessary support to empower them with skills, to empower them with their freedom to speak for themselves. They normally say, don't speak for a person, but just give them the mic to speak for themselves. So I will welcome the next speaker, who is Hashita Jamba from WRI. If you are online, kindly take it up. And if you have questions for any of the speakers, kindly do not shy off, just type them in the chat. We'll be responding at the end of the session.
Right. Thank you so much. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Harshita Jamba, and I'm from WRI India, and I'm joining you today from Mumbai, India. The presentation I have for you today is an exercise that we had done with the Mumbai Metro, where we wanted to demonstrate how important it is to collect gender disaggregated data for planning. And Mumbai has just a minute. Currently, Mumbai, as you can see on the map here, has this one active metro line, which is a very crucial link that connects the east and the west of the city. But as the Mumbai Metro is expanding, we will be, there will be an expected ridership of about 40 lakhs. There is a need to understand why gender disaggregated data is important. We need to collect the data in order to cater to mobility needs of men and women. So just to set some context about, the study, the Mumbai City Metro Line 1 is where we had conducted the study. It is the operational line, which has about 12 stations, and the daily ridership is about 400,000. Now, the aim that we set out with this exercise was to sensitize the agency, right? They have a lot of commuter data coming in. They also know about gender safety, but for the past decade or so, I think, and also in previous presentations, as we heard, we've always been only speaking about how we can make transport systems safer, right? But there is, and all of the efforts that have been done in the past in India and everywhere else have been very ad hoc, right? Because we only try to answer how can we make it safer, and usually as we see later, we have these templatized versions, right? But we need to go beyond and try and also understand how is it that men and women use transport differently, what is it that they want from transport systems, right? And how we did that is we demonstrated the importance of gender disaggregated data. And then we said that, this cannot be a one-time activity. You need to streamline it, or you have to institutionalize this collection of gender disaggregated data. So that is how planning processes are inclusive and not gender blind, right? um, so we began with conversations with the metro agency. This is something that we wanted to do very closely with them, right? And as I spoke about a very templatized version of looking at women's safety, some of the things that the Mumbai Metro also has is the ladies' coach, which is reserved seating, right? In a lot of Indian cities, you have a few coaches or a few seats reserved for women, right? You also have police patrolling the metro stations. Again, a very safety driven sort of initiative, right? They also have women who are in the workforce as operations or as security staff. They also have help desks, helplines, and complaint boxes. Now, this is what I mean when, this is the bare minimum or the bare necessity that a lot of transit agencies, not just in India but across the world, do, right? But we need to go beyond this. We need to understand, if the women are using the reserved seating, why is it that they're using it? Why is it that they're not sitting? Why do they not sit? Why are they not comfortable in the normal sort of coach, right? If there is patrolling happening, what is the response of women? Is that more effective than a CCTV, right? If you have help desks, you have helplines and complaint boxes at all stations, do we have disaggregated data? What are the sort of complaints that men have? What are the sort of complaints that women have? And if we have these complaints, are we aggregating that data? Are we ensuring that such complaints or such untoward instances are not happening again? Is there sort of a troublemaking station? Is there something that is, and one of the things that came across in the conversations is stalking. Women who are taking the metro are often stalked. So what have we done to ensure that that doesn't happen? Now, when we talk about 10% women in operations or 30% in security staff, do we even know how many women are using the metro? Right? For us to deploy a proportion of our staff that that can cater to the women commuters. So how we started this exercise was very simple, right? We started counting. Very basic. We just counted the number of men and women who are using the metro. On the right here, you see the map of the metro. And what we did was, every 15 minutes, we had people manually counting the number of men and women entering and exiting the station, right? And we found that 31% of, we found that this is the average metro ridership of women, that 31% of women in the Bombay metro use the metro. Now, we have this data. Now, we also wanted to ensure that we know at every given point in time during the day, how many men and women use the metro. So we tried to determine the AM peak, which is the morning peak, the off peak, and the PM peak. And we found that most of the women are using the metro between 5:30 to 7:30 in the evening, right? So if you have gendered data, this is the sort of this is the kind of data that you can get. Moving on, after this very basic counting of just trying to understand at any given point in time how many men and women are using the metro, we did another thing, right? So this on the left is the metro station, and all of the numbers that you see are the entries and exits of the metro, right? There are escalators, there are stairs, and there are elevators. Now, traditionally, if you were to collect data, which is gender blind, this is what you would get. That at gate number 1, you have 2,432 people entering or exiting. But if you were to collect gender disaggregated data, then you see the number of men versus women using particular gates to enter and exit the station. And usually you will see later in the presentation that, anywhere above 40%, the red is women, anywhere above 40%, these are the most used entries and exits by the women, and mostly there are escalators or elevators, right? We will also see a correlation between what gate they use versus the built environment. They're lit, they have they have active edges, and they're not like lonely streets, because women will not walk on these streets. So we'll also see a correlation between what gate they use versus the built environment. After this, we also took surveys, right? We surveyed the men and women who are using the metro, and we also surveyed women who don't use the metro. After mapping their trip, we realized that a lot of women actually are traveling alongside the metro, and are not using it. This red dotted line helps you identify all of the trips that could have been made by the metro but are not being done, right? So we found that 61% of the responses could have taken the metro with a high likelihood, because they travel alongside the metro. Now, again, if you collect traditional commuter data, this is what you get, right? Who are your commuters in the metro? You've got workers, you've got students, and you've got non-workers. But if you collect gender disaggregated data, you realize that 76% of your commuters are women workers, 6% of your students are girls who use the metro to go to education, and 18% of your metro users are actually homemakers, right? Now, what is the difference in the way they travel? Um, we see that their purpose of travel between men and women, it varies. Other than work, men use the metro for social visits. Women use the metro for shopping. Now, this is shopping for groceries, getting anything for the house, medical visits, which mean either they are going and seeing a medical practitioner, or they're accompanying dependents for these visits. And then we realized that if we were to collect traditional data, the first thing that people go out and use the metro is for work. The second is to visit friends and relatives. And the third is education. But all of these have an element of caregiving, which women cater to. And if that is accounted for, we realize that mobility of care is actually the third reason why women leave the house and take these transit systems, right? And if we do not record these, we can never ensure that mobility of care, trips done for mobility of care, are catered to. We also realize that the choice of access infrastructure for women and men is different. As we saw earlier, women use a lot of staircases and elevators. The choice of access modes, the first mile and the last mile to the metro, we see that women use IPT services, intermediate public transport services, while men prefer using buses or trains. The perception of safety is again a very important measure. We realized that 35% of women said that they don't feel very safe taking the metro after dark. Association with crowding, a lot of women, they associate crowding with harassment, while men, on the other hand, they associate crowding with inconvenience or COVID-19. These are the sort of differences that will come out when we have gender disaggregated data. Now, even within the two commuter groups that we have here, men and women, within women, you also have homemakers whose their trip patterns are very different. Now, just to take an example, an able-bodied man will cover this trip, which is a 10-kilometer trip, in about 40 minutes, and it will cost him around 100 rupees, right? Now, women usually travel shorter distances. So ideally, if they travel for 5 kilometers, they should be completing that trip in 20 minutes, and the cost should be 50 minutes. But we see that for the same distance travel, their cost is 80 rupees, and the time taken is 30 minutes, right? Now, this is because we don't cater to the needs of the trips that homemakers do. Homemakers usually travel in off-peak. Their waiting times are longer. The mode that they choose for the first and the last mile is usually more expensive They want to ensure that they are comfortably traveling with dependents, which does expect them to shell out more money. They make these trips one after the other. Their trips are not usually point A to point B. They trip chain, right? And they are penalized for that. That is that is what is known as the pink tax. Now, we also asked the commuters of the metro, how can the metro improve, right? And some of the things that came out that women said were about lighting, accessibility, crowding. Men, men did also complain about accessibility, crowding, the frequency, fare. But if we were to look at, if this is not aggregated, this is how it looks like. There are a few things that women want and a few things that men want. Now, if we streamline this process, we realize that women, most of their needs are about safety, making the metro safer, followed by convenience and then service quality. On the other hand, for men, they need more convenience. They are talking about improving the metro's convenience, their service quality, followed by safety, right? Again, the third thing we did was we audited. So we audited the stations, and we the 200 catchment near all of these metro stations to identify the PM peak. And this was done during the evening peak hour of the metro. Now, these are actually photos from the ground. And what we realized is, for a lot of women, well illuminated streets, right? Streets where you have a lot of lights, active public spaces, and police patrolling is available. These are considered to be safe. On the other hand, poor lighting, on-street parking in isolated stretches where you cannot see the road, and poor walking infrastructure was deemed as unsafe. We also analyzed convenience, where women were able to take the next mode of transport was convenient. So multimodal integration is convenient, where there is decent pedestrian infrastructure to walk, to take bags, to ensure that dependents and children don't fall. That good pedestrian infrastructure is convenient. And activity zones, right, where it's not a dead wall or it's not a dead patch of land where there is no activity on the street. All of those are inconvenient. So poor walking infrastructure, inadequate transit infrastructure, and no signage for wayfinding was deemed as inconvenient. So what we did after that was we wanted to map this entire exercise. We geocoded all of these things. For instance, this map, we geocoded lighting and visibility. So we geocoded road safety, which means where are the places where you can cross the road near the metro station safely. Active edges or people on the street, those spots were marked. In terms of convenience, walkability and public infrastructure was marked, cleanliness was marked, and multimodal integration was also marked. What we did then is we compiled all of this in a GIS software, in a sort of a spatial board on GIS, where we had, so if you were to add up all of these safe and unsafe, you have these green and red zones, and then you correlate it to the entries and exits of the metro that we earlier saw, right? So now, to the authorities, to the metro agency, they really have these favorable zones marked and unfavorable zones marked, geocoded. So tomorrow, at any given point of time, they want to ensure that lighting is there, they can do that. Right, so this is what a spatial dashboard sort of looked like, where in a particular metro station, if you just if you uncheck lighting or uncheck if there are no public conveniences, they can sort of have these very structured and very pointed solutions on the ground. What this helped do is visualize all of the data that we spoke about, right? The trends that we saw. If you have this gender disaggregated data on the dashboard, then it helps in policy making, which is not gender blind, right? It also helped to identify what are the gaps when women are using the metro. We also ensured that this study had the first and last mile options, and what are some of the problems with multimodal integration. This entire exercise enables data processes, data mining, analysis, and repository. And this also can be a platform to coordinate between the metro and other agencies that are at play in the larger urban transport systems of our cities. With that, thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Hashita, for that great presentation. Again, if you have questions for Hashita, kindly feel free to post them in the chat. The next speaker and the last speaker for this session is Sam Clark.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back at the Women in Transport conference. I was last there face-to-face in Addis in 2019. Hopefully, there will be an opportunity to be there face-to-face again very soon. Today, I'm going to speak about a project which is very close to our hearts. My name is Sam Clark. I'm the head of programs with an NGO called TransAid. And I'm going to speak about an action research project which we carried out, which is youth engagement in Africa's transport sector, promoting agenda. Many of you might remember, those of you that were here last year, Professor Gina Porter speaking to this project from a research point of view. And this year, I'm going to attack the project from a pilot intervention point of view and tell you a little bit about that. Now, I'm just struggling. There we go. Right. So jumping in with project partners, there were many. So the project was funded by ESRC and GCRF. The lead partner was Durham University. TransAid were brought on to implement pilot projects linked to the findings of the research. And within each of the target countries, we had a number of local partners as well, a mixture of academia and also local implementing NGOs. The approach, a summary of the approach. So the main objective was for us as a team to understand the day-to-day challenges that young women face, specifically young women living in urban peripheries, so on the edges of cities, where there may be obviously more of a requirement to travel on a day-to-day basis. And more of a necessity to use public transport. And the study and the pilot interventions focused on women both as users of public transport, but also women as working within the public transport sector. It was a comparative study, 3 major African city regions, so Tunis in Tunisia, Abuja in Nigeria, and Cape Town in South Africa. And actually this choice of different locations was an interesting mix in terms of the types of transport used. Tunis is sort of categorized, I guess, more in a formal sense of public transport, which is government run and government subsidized. In Abuja, greater use of informal modes of transport, which are obviously sort of unregulated and provide certain challenges in terms of safety in many respects. And Cape Town, which sort of fell in the middle, slightly a mix of informal and formal transportation. But everybody, I'm sure, in the room and online will have heard that the transport sector in South Africa is strongly characterized with incidents of violence, frequent incidents of violence. In fact, we're talking about in Western Cape, which is obviously the province that Cape Town is in, there are 123 murders within the minibus taxi industry alone in 2021. The focus in terms of who we were speaking to, who we were trying to address the concerns from, are young women aged 18 to 35. And TransAid was tasked with local partners to implement pilot interventions in each city, one each for users in a form of user skills workshops. and for employees with employment skills training. So let's start with the user skills workshops. The first country is Tunisia, focus on Tunis. Pretty good participation, high level of participation there, and you can see the target areas, both of which are sort of out the outskirts of located in the outskirts of Tunis. Now, I don't know if many people know this, but Tunisia actually, in terms of legislation protecting women's rights, is generally considered to have the most developed law in that respect in the Arab world. Of course, implementing that law is a very different matter. And what we do find is that in practice, there is still a high level of discrimination against women, not least on the public transport system. But what we discovered as part of the research was a really low level of awareness as to what laws were there to protect women. So activity one, targeting this group of women, was very much around improving that awareness and alerting women to the fact that there are rights by law that protect them in daily life, but also in terms of the usage of public transport. So that was very much, there are actually, in terms of, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Tunis system. I've already mentioned it's a sort of a more formal service provision, but the provision is actually dominated by one company called TransTu. So a lot of that sort of energy in the public transport system is very concentrated and centralized. To their credit, what they do have is systems, mechanisms in place to take complaints. But again, that low level of awareness in terms of how to use that, and also to some extent low levels of confidence in terms of will anything actually be done if I make a complaint, we're there. So there was a reassurance section there with government coming into that section to raise awareness amongst women, but also the legislative context as well. Activity two was the development of a customer service charter. Now, what a customer service charter is to me is effectively a pledge from the public transport company, the public transport provider, of a guaranteed level of service which it would apply to its customer base equally. So what we thought was the perfect place to start was for these women to actually participate in developing a customer service charter themselves. The activity itself speaks to the fact that in all three target locations, the primary finding of the research, unsurprisingly, was that women felt excluded from the process of providing transport. That their opinions, that their concerns were not incorporated in the way that service delivery was taking place. So we had extensive discussions towards putting together a customer service charter. And the customer service charter sort of covers areas such as quality of service, personal safety, customer service, staff, and sort of a code of conduct for staff working on the transport, a commitment to equality, that these codes, this charter, the outcomes of this charter are applied equally to everybody, and also sort of feedback mechanisms to encourage sort of influence from outside as part of that process. Now, it's all very well and easy to say, right, here's your customer service charter to the public transport provider, and say, can you stick this up and action it? But actually, in many cases, and in other countries, which I'll sort of go into in a little while, actually actioning or implementing the customer service charter presents another challenge altogether. So each of these customer service charters were developed with a detailed action plan for every single element, and support offered to actually implement. Moving on to Abuja. Again, high levels of, whoops. I think my screen's just done something. 1 second. Oh, I think there's someone on the system. Doing something. Let me stop sharing and reshare. 1 second. No, I think someone has come into the system. Is there any technical support from that side? Brilliant. All right, let me share again. Fantastic, thank you. Right, we were on, I'm going to move back up. We were on Abuja. So again, high levels of participation, really active, strong group of ladies, which was fantastic. And the target areas there you can see. Oh, we've lost it again.
Sam, you can proceed without the PowerPoint. I think it's still okay.
Okay. All right. Let me try and do that. Okay. So Abuja, the focus here spoke very much to women's concerns around safety and security, which was a primary factor here, and that's what came out of the research. I must admit that activities, probably more so in this project than any other project we've actually delivered over the last few years, was highly disrupted by COVID. And the travel sort of restrictions that were put in place were quite restrictive in terms of what we could and couldn't do. We initially planned a face-to-face road safety session with women over a couple of days, with the Federal Road Safety Commission as well in attendance. That then became a film as it became evident that we weren't going to be able to get the team to the project site. So we have created 3 10-minute films which effectively provide sort of people with an informed way of actually choosing what is a safe and what is an unsafe mode of transport. Here, the predominant modes of transport were 2- and 3-wheelers, so the Okadas and the Keke Napeps. And it was about providing women with the ability to do a rapid assessment when you're choosing which bike, which 3-wheeler to go on. You know, what is the condition of the rider and what is the condition of the machine itself. Now, those videos, there's a Hausa version, there's a Swahili version, and there's an English version. They're available on YouTube. I will copy them into the chat function so you can access them, but they're really good. We're really proud of them. And similarly to Tunis, we developed a customer service charter in partnership, in this case, with the Abuja Urban Mass Transit Company, who I will go on to speak about later, but were highly active participants in this project, which we're really happy about. For Cape Town, again, strong levels of participation, target areas as noted there. Slightly different approach here. We did do a customer service charter, although we preferred to call it a safe taxi charter in Cape Town, the focus being minibus taxis. We also were able to set up in partnership with our local partner, our primary local partner, which was Santako, this South African National Taxi Council, their women's desk, a mechanism through which complaints can be made, and also a mechanism through which there are ways to support each other through an outstanding organisation, which is Santako Women, which I would recommend contacting if anybody does any work in South Africa. The final session, the activity number 2, was obviously a recognition that gender-based violence is prevalent within the sector, that despite the fact some research points to gender-based violence, actually the issue around sexual harassment reducing in theory over the COVID period as we saw less people traveling, a movement of gender-based violence back to the home was still very much evident and therefore obviously a priority in terms of training. Some of the a summary of the findings from these 3 user skills workshops in the 3 countries. I've already mentioned COVID being incredibly disruptive, limits on gatherings, transportation, travel, etc., and also sort of competing priorities at the time. Certainly in Abuja, that safety issue around the use of okadas and kekes was so evident, and there is such a need to do something about it in a sector which is largely unregulated in the country. But a really strong, participative, vocal group of women who are willing to be our champions and make sure change happens. In Cape Town, there was a spike in violence when we were implementing back in, actually just before we were implementing back in mid-2021, which basically argued the fact that this was actually even more necessary at the time. Really strong partners, as I've mentioned, Santaka Women, but also Sonke Gender Justice, which is a South Africa-based NGO. And also Sonke Gender Justice presented an example of quite a unique organisation which had experience of working to support women's rights, but also that cognitive experience of working in the transport sector as well, which was quite unique and made them a really strong partner. Santaka Women, lots and lots of opportunities going forward to implement some of their plans as well. And in Tunis, the COVID measures, many of you will have seen in the local news, in the international news, of the political uncertainty over the last couple of years in government in Tunis. Delays to the project and the restrictions around COVID also did present a constraint to building relationships, and obviously building that relationship with a government transport service provider is absolutely key to the success of that project. And just to provide a bit of context, I mean, what we saw in Tunis was a public transport system which quite frankly is underfunded and has been for many years and is slowly deteriorating. But the positive being we had a really strong local partner, which was Tunisiet, which was an NGO in Tunis. On to employment skills training. So in Tunis, our focus was TransDu, the main public transport provider, and our target were women working in TransDu, of which there were not many. But we provided transport management systems training to them. We provided in-situ support to apply the learnings within their daily work schedules, and then followed up with transport management systems 2 training at the end. This was an aim to, I guess it was in response to some concerns from the research about journey planning and scheduling and the impact that this has on women's safety, and a need to improve that capacity, that skill within TransDu, and to place women at the forefront of making those changes. In Abuja, this comes back to that partnership with the Abuja Urban Mass Transit Company, who we were very positive about. We still are very positive about them. They have, the reason we chose them, because they had a demonstrated commitment to advancing women within the organisation. They're the major public transport provider in the Abuja metropolitan area. This was a mix of women from conductors to administrative staff as well. So we had women at all levels within the organisation, and the aim was really we redesigned the transport management training to give a broad basis of what it is to work in the transport sector in different roles, the use of data in terms of improving service delivery, fleet management, etc., etc., with a view. And this is with the Abuja Urban Mass Transit's commitment, with a view to advancing or providing an avenue for these women to advance through the company to decision-making level posts, which again would come back and benefit the women users. Finally, Cape Town employment skills training. Again, working with Santaco women, but also not excluding the male drivers, of which there are obviously many in South Africa. Our training was specifically designed to match the results of a consultation with female employees within the minibus taxi industry. In fact, an interesting outcome of the violence within the sector is that it's actually pushing more women into the industry, because in many cases, when a male driver is unfortunately a victim of the violence, loses his life, his registration details as an operator pass to his spouse. So what we have in South Africa at the moment is many women entering the industry, which is as you'd expect, a very male biased industry with next to no knowledge of basically what working in the industry entails. So Santaco women provide an absolutely crucial role in supporting women, answering their questions and supporting them into those roles, and that's what we wanted to do as well, to match their strategic goals. So training content included safe vehicle operation, basic vehicle walk around checks, basic mechanical principles, customer care, and actually working at Belleville minibus taxi stand, which is one of the busiest in Cape Town. I think it's the second busiest. We did some sessions with some of the drivers you can see in that bottom picture, all male, on gender-based violence, sort of discussion sessions, exploring their views around that and trying to raise awareness around GBV. You can see second from the right is Shirley, who is one of the line managers within Belleville minibus taxi stand, and has a huge amount of influence. There aren't many women in her position, and she was a fantastic champion of the project. A summary of the findings. So yeah, attendance was relatively low in Tunis, largely due to the number of, or the lack of women within TransTube, but also due to the fact that despite us trying to be as flexible as possible in terms of timing the training, there were competing priorities, particularly during COVID. We did develop as part of this a new gender awareness module, which now forms part of our transport management training. And that was delivered to the TransTube participants. And yeah, senior management engagement was difficult. Again, that relationship building factor was challenging at the best of times. On the other side of the coin, we see Abuja, where we have strong buy-in from the Abuja Urban Mass Transit, high levels of participation from women at all levels within the company. And we also had 2 senior managers who participated in the training throughout. And that buy-in at a senior level is absolutely crucial, and it indicates to us that there is a serious intention or commitment to actually institute change for the better. Going through to Cape Town, again, strong local partners, Sonke and Santaco, and so much opportunity for future. Santaco women are a fledgling organisation sitting within the wider Santaco Council, the Santaco Group. At the moment, they do not have a budget allocated to them by the South African National Taxi Council, but they are developing a strategy which is a progressive step. They're a really strong, vociferous group of women, and TransAid certainly is going to support them to try and get what they want. This last page is just some of the resources that have come out of this project. The top is a sort of a website which we've created where you can find out a little bit more. The TransAid Knowledge Centre is somewhere where you can get sort of access to tools, to technical briefs and project reports. And there have been a few publications as